Okay, I think we're good to go here. Um, so when we're looking at the art of fiesta, and it's really kind of the history and the stories of our Old Spanish Days posters, the first thing you think of is just, okay, Old Spanish Days, and these will be pretty pictures, which they are. And one of the unique things about our fiesta is that our collection of artists who have worked on these include amateur artists, just people who do this on the side, professional local artists who are known in our community, as well as nationally and even internationally renowned artists. So there's one part, just the art. Also, our fiesta posters tell us about our community. They tell us about the culture going on in our country. And, sometimes there are motifs or details in a poster which, you're looking at it years later and it seems like a complete mystery. Like, what was that about? Until to be revealed, until we know something about the artist or the El Presidente behind the poster. So basically what we can say is every poster tells a story. So every picture tells a story, to quote Rod. But let's just get started and jump off the very first year, 1924. And there was a poster contest, and it was won by Frederick Alexander Paula. And he came from Britain and actually was born in the 19th century. Anyway, he made his way to Santa Barbara. He won the poster contest. This was used in 1924 and in 1925. We'll get to that in a second. But there was somebody else who entered the poster contest, and that's worth mentioning. Well, actually, let's go back first to this lady. I just want to point out. So one of the typical things you see in so many posters, because it's Santa Barbara, is the mission. So there's our mission. And you notice her pose. So many of the dancers will have one arm akimbo, one on their waist, and the other one, up over their head. And so we see this here as well. But when we had that poster contest, here's who else entered. So this says The Beggar on Horseback. That was the show that opened at the Libero. When the Libero was newly opened, they just revamped it, rebuilt it, et cetera, et cetera. And this was submitted by Luda Marie Riggs, who was a young architect just coming back to town. And she drew this, and it's basically trying to show something about the story of the show, The Beggar on Horseback. And she said to people, oh, it was a shame it didn't win, but apparently some people on the committee were big horse people. Well, Dwight Murphy was one of them. And supposedly, I don't know if this is true, sometimes it's, what people say when they lose, and sometimes there's some truth to it, that they were trying to make Santa Barbara as a renowned horse community, and therefore they didn't want to have this creature featured on the poster that was going out. Number two, you look down in the corner, you don't see the mission. You see the Libero, and she was the draftsman, worked under George Washington Smith when they redid the Libero, and she did especially the ceiling, number of things there, but that was to her credit, and so we see the Libero there. So a little bit of scoops there. One other thing is, you see it says August 4th through 16th, because this was the show at the Libero. And it says, opens the Libero Theater, these are the dates, follow The Beggar on Horseback, and then go to Old Spanish Days. People often say Old Spanish Days happened because of the Libero, but actually they were two completely separate events. The Fiesta people got together in basically May to come up with this idea, and they were trying to get a visitor, attract tourists. And as it came on, as you're going into summer, and they were going to have this in September. But as time went on, and they realized more and more that they've got fewer funds than they think they're going to get, they decided to, why don't we hitch on to the tailcoats of the Libero, who has all this money to do the promotions, and just hitch on the back of it, and why don't we have it during that second week? So that's how Fiesta and the Libero got together. But they did start out as two completely separate events. Alrighty, another one, here's 1925. We're back again, and this is Paula's because we still use the same poster, but here are the dates for 1925. Now I know some of you are thinking, wait a second, we didn't have Fiesta in 1925. There was the Great Earthquake. Well, we did have a Fiesta, but what we couldn't have was a parade, which has always been the centerpiece of Fiesta, because We had just had, 6 weeks earlier or so, we had the earthquake, and pretty much everything that was standing on State Street was now in the middle of State Street. So we're not able to hold a fiesta, but we did have a show, and we did have many different little events, one of which attracted the attention of the local animal control and animal rights people because they heard there was going to be a bullfight. So they raced down to where the bullfight was, only to find out it was locals dressed up as a bull and reenacting a pretend bullfight. So they just got in their cars and ran their sirens and pulled out of there. But nonetheless, just to let us know that there was a 1925 fiesta. And here is from the 1926 fiesta. These are the dates, but we don't know who did this art, or at least not yet, and what this was all about, or whether this came from another area. Sometimes they would borrow photographs, as we'll see, but nonetheless, we just want to highlight that. Now we jump up to the really juicy ones. These are the seaside posters, and these were created by a man named Ray Lawthorne, who was the art director for Seaside Oil. Seaside was the company at this time that had the oil wells in Summerland. So he had an office there. He was the art director for Seaside Oil. And his posters are probably the most beloved and famous because they are so striking. And let's take a look at this very first one. So this was for 1935, if I remember correctly. And we've got the mission there. I just want to draw your attention down to the bottom. It says, make reservations here, La Entrada de los Americanos, a drama of California in 8 episodes, stadium. So this tells us, wait, what was this all about? There used to be what they called the Fiesta pageant. And each year, a man named Charles Presley, who was kind of the managing director of Fiesta as time went on, and he would write these fabulous historical plays, all very, maybe you could say, hokey and homegrown, but everybody loved it. Everybody in Santa Barbara would be appearing in the show. And he wrote them from the very first year and continued basically for several decades doing these famous, what they called the Fiesta pageant. And this is his theme this year, was the coming of the Americans. Stadium means Peabody Stadium, because we didn't have the bowl for another 2 years ready to have his shows. Thereafter, they were called the Fiesta Bowl shows because that's where they were presented. So here from a poster, we just learn a little bit about what's going on during Fiesta and in our community. Here's another one. And again, a fabulous poster. And what we love about these is it tells us about design for poster. What makes a good poster design? And posters in the 19th century, especially in the West, were especially attractive to people who were illiterate. So what you did was you had a very strong image about something that was going to be happening in town, usually maybe a performing art, the circus, this sort of thing. And the dates, because they might know at least 1920 and to know that that was during the month. And that you should be able to read the poster. You can't read the fine print, but to read the major things from maybe 10 feet, 12 feet away, right? Because most of the time you're walking down the street, there's a poster in a store window, and can you tell exactly what's happening? So this is a very good example of that. We know it's Old Spanish Days. We can tell by the costumes, the Cordoba hat, the girls with the shawls and the fans and the ruffled skirts and the old-fashioned carriage. I don't know where this is supposed to be necessarily, but I always imagine that it's Anacapa Street and we're going past the courthouse to me. And Ray Lawthorne, by the way, they moved the Seaside Oil offices into Santa Barbara from Summerland. Well, nowadays we go, well, what the heck, one is as good as the other. But when Seaside moved to Santa Barbara, they really wanted to tie into Santa Barbara. And that's why they agreed that they offered to basically back all these or underwrite these posters. And here's their art director, and he would do all the work. He also developed a special kind of silk screening process. He was a very, very talented guy, which so many of our artists on our posters could do. Alrighty, so let's take a look at a couple more of these. Oh, and once more to go about this, the good design. It's not necessary to be a fantastic artist to have a good poster. It's all the big design features. So the balance, the color, the communication, the lettering, And notice the lettering here, because this is something unique to Santa Barbara, I think, how many of our posters had specialists that designed the lettering. They just didn't come out with a typeface and print it down. So with all of that underway, let's scoot on and look at the rest of the posters. So here's another one. This is said to be, there's the mission to the left, and probably is imitating Leo Carrillo, and he was in our fiestas a great deal, and that kind of looks like him. Or maybe he was just kind of evocative of Leo Carrillo. And here's the mission again with our local Indians and showing Old Spanish Days, 1939. I love this one, very clear. There's the mission, there's the guitar player. Another common feature, guy on the guitar serenading a girl or serenading another couple, and they just love being, you know, in the presence. Again, a beautiful work by Roy Lawthorne. And is this our last one? Santa Barbara, Old Spanish Days, 1941. Can you see about halfway down on the far left, you can see the mission is tucked in there. So we're always giving it a place and time. It's Santa Barbara, and that's our signature iconic building is the mission and the people dressed in festive care. Now, what happens after this is World War II. We don't have Fiesta. We don't know some of the Fiesta posters after that. But until we come to 1953, and all you baby boomers, this is our favorite, this is our most iconic, most endearing poster, and that is the dancing couple. This was done by Olive Smith and her husband. This looks like her born and death date and her resurrection date, but this is actually when this poster was used, from 1953. There's a couple spots out, but pretty much 53 to 85, so over 30 years, and again, in 2012. So here's the first one, 1953. And we see a very striking couple dancing, that complete everything I love about this. So this year was the year, 1953, that Charles Stork was presidente. And of course, he was the son of news press publisher editor Tom Stork. So Charles Stork worked at the news press, and he decided to look around and see what, you know, tap his staff for their talents. Now, Dick Smith did the Fiesta edition every year, so he seemed like a good one to tap. And Dick Smith's wife, Olive, was a fantastic illustrator and painter and artist. So she did the artwork here in watercolor, which is quite phenomenal here. And the lettering, look at the top, that banner with that specialized designed, it was done by Dick Smith. Dick Smith was the wilderness, Dick Smith Wilderness, Dick Smith, and he had so many talents. He's worth a whole nother show or book. But nonetheless, a very talented man. He did the lettering and she did the paintwork. Now, one of the things, let's go to the next one. We see here's later on 1961, and it's green, and the dancer is in red. And people say, you know, at that time, it would be the same color for several years, but why not change it every year? And the reason for that has to do with production. So these were very big posters, very heavy weight. And what they did was print these in Los Angeles on a web press. A web press is used for big runs, such as newspapers, or when you're doing thousands of brochures. And what they would do is, to make it cost effective, is they'd print several thousand in this color. And then at the bottom, you see the dates in black. And then Hagen Printing locally would then supply each year what the dates were. So this would last for a couple of years. They do a new run of the different colored dress, and then Hagen would put the letters, the dates on for that particular year. Here's another one in orange, and you notice the dancer changes, and even his cummerbund color has changed. And here we have 1974, the 50th anniversary of Fiesta, and now she's got a striking blue dress. So the question often comes up is, who are the people in this? Are they just anybody, a figment of the imagination of the artist? Were there models for this? Which usually that happens. And in more recent years, I always understood it was Jose Manero and his dance partner, Paquita Del Rey. Now, I took dance from Jose Manero, and I knew him very well, and that was very exciting to see my dance teacher up there. But some time ago, more than 10 years ago, I was doing some research on them at the Santa Barbara Historical Museum in the library there. And I realized, you know what? Paquita Del Rey doesn't look anything like that, actually. She has a very round face. She was usually seen in folklorical costume rather than Spanish classical. And here's a picture of Paquita, very round face, and there's Jose Manero. That would have been a very typical costume that you would see them dancing in. Then the next question was it Kay Chapman? So I looked up Kay Chapman, and she looked more like the girl. But long story short is I met a gentleman one time who was a big dancer at this time during Fiesta. His name was Agustin de Guevara. He and his wife, Sally, they didn't have a studio per se, but they brought other dancers in. So he had his own troupe, danced all over the blooming place as well, at the courthouse, at the El Paseo, up in Santa Maria for special events having to do with a Spanish theme or a fiesta theme. And so I tracked them down, some of the family members, and sure enough, it turns out that the man had told me that he and his wife had posed for a poster. And I said, well, is it the Old Spanish Days poster? Or isn't that Jose Manero? And he just kind of humbly shook his shoulders and said, well, yeah, I don't know. We were posing for a poster. Now, the family of Olive and Dick Smith, I talked to one of the siblings there, and they remember it being Jose Manero, and their family, at least for the kids, saying, yeah, it was Jose Manero. But nonetheless, here's what I found. Here is Augustine and Sally de Guevara, and they are posing with the poster that they posed in. And then I found a picture of Sally, and she's modeling the dress there that she wears, and she's got her hat, but she's pointing up to the poster there. So this seems to be a good fit. And also, let's go back a second there. As you see, Jose has a rounder face, but when I met Augustine, he had a very angular face, and I went, you know, that actually looks like the guy in the poster. And he had a thinner build, and I knew Jose very well. Jose was, of course, the amazing dancer, teacher, the love of everybody in dancing here. But I have to say that looks so much like Augustine. So there's a mystery that we have that seems to be solved here. Next, we come to the local artist and local people. What I love about Santa Barbara is we love to feature ourselves, our locals. So not only in the artists, but also in the portrayal of everybody, as we will see here. So here is Rick Sharp. All of you baby boomers might remember him from the 70s and the 80s. He was a sign maker, but very talented artist. And he was doing this work. Gosh, he was still a teenager when he got into the business and was doing this professionally, and then did work for all kinds of big companies. And here he's depicting, I don't know who the man is, but the girl here is the 1977 Spirit of Fiesta, Linda Cruz. And her mother is Rose Marie Cruz, who is still dancing and still teaching. She's had her studio for, gosh, several decades, and she's still growing strong. And here is Jesse Garcia. He's another local artist, amateur artist, but nonetheless, we see here no mission. So what's going on here? Well, it's 1982, so it's basically the bicentennial of the founding of Santa Barbara with the Presidio. So there's no mission, instead it's the Presidio. And I love this. He found two descendientes. These are descendants of the original Presidio soldiers, Janine Robles and David Goena, and he has them pictured here. What I love also is on the Old Spanish Days board, as well as just in the community, sometimes we have nicknames for these posters. So when people are trying to remember it, they notice this. I love this. See the chickens down by his feet? So they want the one with the chickens and the rooster? Yeah, just because it's so different. And look at the very top in that banner, there's somebody who has done that hand lettering once again. So I just love that about Santa Barbara. They just didn't put anything in there. They were just going to make it very artistic, very local, and we like that. And here's Rick Sharp again, another beautiful picture of the mission, just a great illustrator. It's the 60th anniversary of our Old Spanish Days, and he features 1980 Spirit of Fiesta, Cynthia Romero. Her mother, Marge Romero, has been a long-time faithful member on our board, really hardworking lady. So beautiful daughter. And I love that he's featuring it on an oxen cart, which was the big U-Haul of the day back in our Rancho period. And here's another fun one. Look at the bottom. Let's start at the bottom, the lettering. I have Marty Neumeyer did the lettering. And does this look familiar to anybody? Have you seen this lettering before? Not just right here on the poster. Is something familiar about that? This is especially for you baby boomers, I would say. And the reason this looks familiar is he did art and did, the advertising and marketing for Santa Barbara Bank and Trust. Now, does that look familiar? Because that was the logo type, the lettering that he designed, the typeface for Santa Barbara Bank and Trust. And this particular year, 1983, the El Presidente was George Kolusky, and he was marketing director for the Santa Barbara Bank and Trust. And he turned to Marty and said, "You want to put a poster together?" And Marty turned and looked in his agency and tapped Sandra Higashi, a fabulous, fabulous artist. He told me, I think she whipped us out in 2 hours. She has gone on to have a fabulous career. And if you've ever seen those very, they're kind of, I don't want to sound, this is degrading, but they're like coloring books for adults, and they have really interesting patterns. And she has a series of those, God, several, 6, 7, or 8 in that series. And they created this one, which looks very 1980s, doesn't it? This one, William Andrew, there was another poster contest. Now, in general, I always advise people, don't do a poster contest. That can run you into trouble. But we have such good talent here that we ended up getting some good talent again. And so here is William Andrew, and he is making a wonderful portrait of Maria Margelli, the vegetable lady. And she would be on a burro, and she would have tons of flowers or sometimes fruit, vegetables, passing it out. And she's one of those iconic figures of our Fiesta parade that every child would look forward to seeing every single year. Oh, there she is. And different generations have different typical people that you would see. And for those back in the 40s, 50s, I guess even 60s, it was Maria Margelli. And here she is in real life with her basket of flowers. Here's Chip Rowley. And he was kind of managed the art gallery in the USEN at UCSB. And I wish I could make this even bigger. And this, sometimes I'm mentioning that it says ghost musicians, because those of us on the board sometimes are longtime Fiesta people say the poster with the ghost musicians. Well, first of all, let's just look at this. Beautiful mission. And look at all the detail, especially the banner on top. It's just lovely, just really, really beautiful. This is for 1990. It was a friend of the El Presidente, Peter Georgi. So look at the couple, and he's playing guitar, and she's, he's wooing her, and she's fanning herself. And at the shadow of the old mission by the fountain there's another couple dancing in the background. There's a little dog in between both the couples. I don't know if you could see that. And then there's another lady to the right, but above them, there's some ghost musicians. So let's zero in and see if we can see that. There they are. You can see one has got the lower one, a seated figure playing the violin, and the other one looks like playing a trumpet or some kind of horn. And I don't know what's happening there. And I'm wondering if there was a rush and they had to get this to print and the artist didn't fill it in. But if anybody knows Chip Rowley, I'm really curious. So that would be fun to find out. But nonetheless, it's very, very pretty drawings, especially like that banner. Let's look at that banner again. The Old Spanish Days, just beautiful, all hand done. And the columns, lovely, lovely, lovely. And here we have for 2007, Ralph Waterhouse, a name basically everyone knows. He's a professional artist, and he has the wonderful gallery downtown in La Arcada. And he was tapped by El Presidente Kelly Magny and said, could you do a beautiful beautiful painting? Ralph is known especially for his fantastic landscapes all over the county of Santa Barbara. So this one is a figure drawing, and he looks at Kelly and says, well, if you want, somebody on the fountain, I think I'd like to have you as my model. And she made a beautiful model. So she didn't really mean to have the poster about herself, but just it was her year, and she's very striking and looks absolutely gorgeous in the dress, and again in front of the mission and at the fountain. Here is Elise McConnell. And if that name sounds familiar, you're probably thinking the ice cream. And you'd be right, because this is the daughter of the ice people who founded the ice cream back in 1948 when he came back from the war. But she was a talented artist. And she did this one of late 1987 of the Spirit of Fiesta for 1975. That's Antoinette Lopez. And again, you see the peak of the Mission behind her. So she's dancing way in front of it. Antoinette was grew up here in Santa Barbara. She also studied with Jose Monero. She opened a little studio just teaching neighborhood kids, I think out of her garage when she was about 14, and went on and had a studio here. And I guess she's now training and performing in Las Vegas, has a studio there. But Elise McConnell sadly has passed away, but very gifted artist. I think she also used to work at the I Modenari Festival. And this is Elaine Sweeney. She had worked on a number of the posters, but this one is, I think what she was inspired by, there was a photograph, and I couldn't find it to show here, of a horse rearing, and a good artist. And here we've got Fiesta for that. We've got a bunch we'll have to go through here. Here's another iconic figure of Fiesta, Hattie Fizel, born in 1911. She died when she was 100 years old. If you were a baby boomer, if you were older than that, if you were younger than that, you all would have seen her in Fiesta. Born in 1911, she was about, I don't know, 9 years old or something. Yeah, she would have been 9 years old, and rode a horse for the precursor to Fiesta, which was the La Primavera Festival. She was dressed in blue, and look at the detail on the horse. It's got all the trimmings and everything else. And she always had an umbrella to take care of herself. Well, she rode every single Fiesta. That's why several generations of us have seen her. You didn't have to know her. You just knew, there's the lady on the horse in the blue dress, and all the little kids would get excited. And then parade announcers would tell us, and she's 80 years old. She's 85 years old. She's 90 years old. She's still on the horse. She's 92 years old. She's 94 years old. Finally, at 97 years old, she stopped riding, and she said that's because her horse gave out. However, we did keep her in the parade, and we put her in a carriage. So this work by K. Noella McWilliams was done as a tribute to her, because she died 2011, Hattie Fizel. And it's not the regular Fiesta poster, which we'll see later, but nonetheless, she did this, and then it became kind of a special poster that we did as a fundraiser. But marvelous work on the horse and the ruffles. And there's Our Lady, just to show you. And she looks about 95 there, I think, but she was still on the horse. She was maybe weaving a bit, but man, she was upright. She took the whole Fiesta parade. This is what we love about Santa Barbara, is our own special provincial people, characters, and a salute to Hattie. This one, a little story behind it. There was hand lettering once again. And I put that the artist was Detective Casey Nicholson, and I believe he's with the Ventura Police, or maybe the deputies down in Ventura County now. But the Presidente this year was Roger Aceves, who was a policeman, sergeant at the Santa Barbara Police Department, and he tapped one of his fellow officers and to create this, and there you go. And here we have 2011, the same year that we had the Hattie Fizel, but this was the actual poster for that year. Laura Jasperson did this. It was another poster contest, and she was selected the winner and chose to highlight the cascarones of Fiesta. Because of course, every kid that grows up here, you go through the stage where you're either bringing them or you're begging your mother to buy them on the street corners. Lorna Dillon, who's well known for her Western cowboy horses, ranch work, cattle, all those kinds of landscape, did this one. And who's our figure in the front there? It's the Jenkins, there's Cy and Karen. You also see the Spirit of Fiesta behind them. And so what if there, we've got the theme here, Vaqueros y Vaqueras, and that's because the son, Josiah Jenkins, was Presidente this year. So he found a fine Western artist, and that's what we go for 2013. Now here's an intriguing one. We call this sometimes the Halloween Fiesta poster because it's nighttime and it's intriguing looking. It's a little eerie looking. And this has a little bit of a story behind it. This year was the Presidente, the artist was Russell Carter, the Presidente was Dennis Ricard. And some years before this, in 1948, 49, his father was Presidente. Sometimes you might know John Ricard was both a judge, and he was city attorney, and he was mayor over the course of his life. But when he became El Presidente, the father, they had a reenactment of of Portola's visit to Santa Barbara. And originally that was in 1769. So they reenacted that in 1948, 1949. They brought this in, and what the son, Dennis, is now doing is reenacting that from 60 years earlier, or whatever it is. And so there's the people, they would have been coming down from the mountain and coming by the mission and looking at everything to reenact what it was for Portola. And so this was very popular. Also, you see wait a second, but what's with the fireworks? They used to have fireworks lit up behind the mission in the field at St. Anthony Seminary. To the left, you see one of the photographs. I think that was from the 1948-49, when Dennis Ricard's father was El Presidente, and they are 49, and they would have been having the fireworks happening at the mission. So that's why this is very evocative, and it's the history of 48 going back to the history of 1769. There'll be a test. I hope you've memorized all that. And here's Bradnack. He's a well-known local artist, regional artist. And mostly what you know him for is these very whimsical drawings, kind of cartoonish, especially of the reindeer. So if you look him up, you will see his work online. And the Presidente for this year, he almost looks like Roger Perry dancing there with his wife. And that's what we've caught here for 2006. And this year is Jeremy Harper for 2016. Our El Presidente was J.C. Gordon, who was a surfer. So he had a lot of theme having to do with the ocean. And Jeremy Harper is known for his beautiful landscapes. And this one, kind of a seascape landscape. You notice it almost looks like a very, very old painting of Santa Barbara at that time. And you can see the mission up on the hill crest. You can see the Presidio, and not much else happening because not much else was happening. So his theme was the ocean, and that's why we featured that there. Generations. This is this year's. Now this is kind of fun for our Presidenta, Stephanie Petlow. Draw your attention to the middle of the poster, the dancing figure. Her theme for this year is generations. So here you see in the poster, you see the mother, her mother painted the watercolor of the dancer about 15 years ago. So we've got that in there. Then Stephanie's granddaughter, Nadia, just 14 years old, and she drew the mission, also the courthouse, and the Friendship Dolphin Fountain you see down in the lower corner. She did that working with a photograph, but she's 14. Nonetheless, she hand drew that and colored it in. So that's quite something. When you see the dolphin fountain, that we have, remember, there's also a dolphin fountain in Puerto Vallarta. So it's pictured here because Stephanie's father-in-law was president of our sister cities and was down in Puerto Vallarta when they installed a dolphin fountain there. So a lot of the generations that you see here are represented in here as generations. And nicely done. We'll move on here. Okay, a little side note here. We go to the sign of the times. And this is just something I came up with, just interesting things, just a couple things to pop out here. This is not one of our better posters. This is 1956, if I remember correctly, and doesn't have the dates on it. And perhaps there's several versions of these that have the dates. I think someone told me that. And you can't really make out what's here. But I say it's a sign of the times because it tells us something what's going on in the world. In 1956, we're just a decade out of the end of World War II. And at the end of World War II, we have just kind of a different everything going on. We've changed from this industrial society from the previous century. Now we're really into the technological. We're into efficiency and machines and reducing everything to the essentials, being efficient all over the place, no fluffy details. not so worried about the experience, but rather just the knowledge of something. And I was looking at this and thinking, that's how this looks, doesn't it? And instead of giving us the full flavor of all the different parts of Fiesta, instead, these are just sort of sketches. It almost looks like a travel bureau. What can you do during Fiesta? Well, you could go to the mission. You could go to the courthouse. You could see the parade with horses. You could see, I can't even see what's the other part. Anyway, that's all represented here. And the other curious part is, I don't know if this ties in, I'm just throwing this out, was the Presidente this year, at that time, Grover Drake, was 70 years old. So maybe it was his age kind of looking back on everything and being able to see these kind of technological changes. And maybe this is what represented what was going on in society and where he thought the Fiesta poster should be. So that's just a thought, but we'll put that one out there. Now this one, that looks very groovy, 1969, and that again looks like a sign of the times. And we can tell just looking at it what that era is. It's the late 60s, early 70s. Yep, it's 1969. The artist for this was Carlos La Cámara, and he had a big advertising firm. He was an illustrator himself, meaning this sort of illustration that you would use in advertising. And you can tell the look of that looks like she should be maybe on the cover of, Hot Tamales or something. It looks very commercialish. And he had his agency. This is sort of like full circle history. He had his agency in Cuba. And this is, I guess, just really 60 years ago. And 1960, and we were having all the overthrow of everything happening in Cuba with Castro, and this guy escaped. So he and his wife got out, and they had a little boy about 2 years old, who has the same name, by the way, Carlos La Cámara, and he's very big in Hollywood. Anyway, he made his way to the United States. He was hired by National Geographic and was an illustrator for them for a number of years. Came to California about 67. He did do a show of his work in El Paseo, but somebody got a hold of him, the ad club, and they volunteered to have him do the poster for the Presidente that year, which was William Wesley. So again, just, it's so evocative of that time. That's very interesting. Just all the swish of her scarf, the way that looks, everything about it. But there we go. And here's another kind of sign of the times. Oh, once again, let's look at the hand lettering. That was hand lettered. This is hand lettered. And this was done, another one by Jesse Garcia. You might remember he did the Presidio one with our chickens and the Descendientes. And so this one is one of those things you look at and you say, what's going on here? You see some little figures at the bottom coming through the arch. It kind of looks like Sancho Pancho, Pancho and Don Quixote, Sancho Panza, that's what I'm trying to say, and Don Quixote. And there it looks like the Liberty Bell. So what's going on? Exactly what you thought it was, those two things. We were celebrating, first of all, the country's bicentennial. So there you've got the Liberty Bell. It's kind of floating in air, but it almost looks like it should be attached right under the arch there. And the other one was the celebrating the Anza coming into town back in 1776. And so that's what you see represented there. And you see in the distance, the little couple, and you can see in the far distance, more people following the Anza coming in. Now let's take a look at some of our nationally known artists. Here's W.H.D. Kerner, artist of the American West. The name of his painting that he did was called Fiesta, and it was an illustration for Stewart Edward White. And he was an author of historical novels, including Ranchero, but a whole lot of these were based on Spanish California. And this is a name that we don't really know anymore, Stewart Edward White. He was huge, huge in the teens and the 20s. He was like a name that everybody would know in literature, but he lived in Santa Barbara. Actually, our former council member, Bendy White, is, I think, a great nephew. And Stewart Edward White's house, for those of you remember when you are coming up to the mission and you're coming up Los Olivos, and you remember where the Poor Clares are? Well, the main big house behind the front was Stewart Edward White's house until later on he left, and then it was sold to the religious there. But nonetheless, this current corner is very well known for his depiction of the American West and also Spanish California. And he lived here in Santa Barbara, and you can see there's the hat, the vaquero, the senoritas with the lace. Gorgeous. Oh, I have to add one more thing. Many of you might know his grandson, Fal Oliver, who's locally a drummer. So it's always the Santa Barbara provincial connection. That's the fun of it. This is my favorite artist of the Spanish California. This is Alexander Harper. I actually worked on this poster. I found this image online and I went, wow, I have never seen this in all of Alexander Harper's works. So I was trying to track it down. I think I found the owner, but I didn't know where he lived. And I went to Marlena, who is been on our board here at the museum, and she was able to track this down and said, yes, I know who owns it. I'm familiar with the painting, so we were able to use this. Let me take a close-up so you can get an idea of what's going on in there. And you see the tremendous detail that he has here. If you look to the lower right corner, you can see that's a shoe mash, but he's accurately depicting it in the way they wear their headdress and the baskets and the rest of this. Let's go, here's some more detail. This painting to begin with is only about maybe 12 by 14. It's not a huge canvas. And I'm always shocked at how much detail he can put in. And I'm wondering if he didn't paint it with like a needle or something, because how he could get this detail. Our historical museum did a show of his exhibit of his work several years ago. And one of these figures that would be in here, they blew it up life size and it wasn't blurry. You could see every little detail. That you could see the scarf on the right here full of the flowers, that you can see the ruffles, you can see the ribbon on her dress. Just to go back, see where it is here. This is probably about the size of your computer screen, is the full size of the original photo, not a whole painting, not a whole lot bigger than that. Just really remarkable. And here is another one used in 2004. This was Clay Dickens' year. And oh, I forgot to mention, in Alexander Harper, he married into a local Spanish family, and he came from New Jersey, but he was really taken with the stories and of course the costumes and the colorful everything. He was in Santa Barbara, this would be around the 1880s, 90s, over the turn of the century, and was really taken with everything. And he captured all these stories that people told and all the details and the things that he saw in his paintings. He also usually has his wife and sometimes his daughter in every painting. And you can see her here on the left, furthest left, on top of the horse. And in the center painting behind, right in the middle, the younger woman there, I believe is his daughter Inez. And she was married for some time to Jack Northrop, as in Northrop Aviation, which of course he came from Santa Barbara as well. Clay Dickens was the Presidente this year, and his sister was an artist, graphic artist, and specifically designed type. So she designed all of this type that you see here. Oh, here's some more detail. There we see the mother on the left and the daughter on the right in the center there. And here's Ed Beran, and his story is, the title of his painting is The Gathering. And you can't even speak about the Art of Fiesta without thinking of this Ed Beran. And of course, we have an entire gallery dedicated to him at the museum. And he's such the renowned Western artist. He loved Fiesta. He lived in Santa Barbara. He participated in the very first Fiesta. He had a very Mexican charro outfit as opposed to Spanish vaquero, and charro silver and leather. And he drove during the parades. He would drive in authentic string pack mules. You might remember that he worked as a vaquero for some years in Mexico. So he really understood and appreciated the cowboy, caballero, vaquero roots of Fiesta. And likewise, in that same vein, he was a founding member of the Rancheros Vistadores, and he was a close friend of Will Rogers. And the lady I mentioned before, Marlena Miller, and her husband were very key in creating the Beran gallery that we have at the Historical Museum. He was also a close friend of Will Rogers, and His studio, where else? Where else could it be in Santa Barbara when you're that tied into it? It was in El Paseo, right in the street of Spain. He also sketched a number of letterheads for our longtime Presidente Sam Stanwood. He was Presidente from 1928, 1927 to 1947. And it was the thank you notes that Sam Stanwood would be sending out, and Ed Beran would design, some kind of letterhead with obviously a Spanish or cowboy motif on that. And you can also see his 80-foot frieze of his drawings, Ed Beran, at the Carriage Museum. Ooh, I'm one behind. Okay, we'll just jump into this one anyway. Here is a gathering of friends, and this mural is one of 6 murals done by Vancina, an artist, and who lived in town, and he was quite the character. And he used very good figures, and he had different scenes of Spanish California. One that I have in one of my books is the one that has the wedding at the De la Guerra, Casa de la Guerra. And one of the things he had was a bunch of anachronisms, things that weren't necessarily historically accurate, but we don't care because it's the fun of the thing. And for instance, here we have a gathering of friends, and I just enjoyed this so much. So he's not worried about really being historically accurate. It's the spirit of the thing. So you're looking at the courthouse here, and you're looking through to the other side, which is the library. So that's very 20th century. But what he's trying to be evocative of here is centuries earlier. But our gathering of friends, when we look a little closer, it looks like the friends are from the East Coast. We're at the courthouse, so maybe this is, this could have been the Salem trials, and these look like the the guys, anyway, from back east out there. But you see in the foreground, these are sort of Spanish looking, but very royal Spanish, not necessarily what you've seen in Santa Barbara. But it's the spirit of the thing. And check the guys out on the horses. You also have some conquistadores, the helmets there, that would not have been anything in Santa Barbara. But, it's the gathering of friends. Let's just all get together, and it's fiesta. So whatever time period or part of the country, just come to Santa Barbara. It's good for a fiesta. It's good for a party. And the spirit of fiesta is we all throw a party for ourselves in Santa Barbara because all you visitors are coming. And here's a fabulous one, Jesus Elgarra. This is La Bamba, and he was considered the Norman Rockwell of Mexico. And if you take a close look at this, oh gosh, there's just so much detail in here. So it is so much like Norman Rockwell. And he's 20th century. And if you remember the song La Bamba, first of all, look at the detail. So the costumes here are Veracruz, which was the port coming into Mexico. And therefore, a lot of the music and the things would have been have a lot of European influence. So you see some guitars and little other little things in there. You can't see all of it, but you know the song La Bamba. And if you know the traditional one, not the Ricky Valens, which is rock and roll bamba, but the original one with the harp that starts off, and in the corner there, you see he even has the harp. I just love this. So here I just want to show you at the skirt. Can you see there's that vertical line on top is the top part of the harp. The strings go down, and then you can see kind of the baseboard on the bottom. I'm married to a harpist, so I couldn't resist, looking this up and saying, did they have a harp? Yes, he put the harp in there. But notice in this enlargement, how exquisite the lace is. He's got all the detail on the lace and all the folds in there. Just totally remarkable. That's just on the white lace. We haven't gotten to the ruffles, the pink part, just the white lace and how much work that is. Just fantastic. So let's take a look at that again. So just there we have Celebrate Traditions, and showing our folklorico side that we've included in our fiesta since the beginning. And here's another marvelous local artist, but well-known also nationally, and that's Nick Fifouris, who was actually born and raised in Santa Barbara and displayed talent very early on. He did a special kind of piece when he was in World War II and traveling. And it was almost like sort of like a pictorial diary of what was going on without revealing state secrets. But anyway, what was taking place during World War II. So we look at this and we see, again, a beautiful rendition of the mission, the clouds, all the characters, there's so much, all the little parts that he has in here. Looking to the far left, you see the people in, kind of dark, but you can see the figures and you can see a little boy running. Then you see the couple on the horse and saluted by other people on the horse. You can see just right down in front of the mission, you can see the oxen cart. They used to have one of the oxen carts actually at the mission on the inside when you were going to enter from the side door on the inside from the courtyard, but just really marvelous and great to look at. But just, yeah, Nick Fifouris. If you didn't know better, like me, when you first see it, you think it's Nick Furfires, but it was Greek. So I'm probably still not pronouncing it perfectly, but nonetheless, you recognize the name here. And here's a very interesting, Kristen Tinker Nelson. And she came from quite a talented, very, very talented family on so many levels. Her brother is Mark Harmon, that you might know from the TV show NCIS. And she was married to Nelson, I'm just blanking right now, Ricky Nelson, the rock and roll star who was killed later on. And they had 4 children together. And the twins, you might know, are called the Nelsons, and they still perform. And she was a nationally recognized artist. I know Jackie Kennedy Onassis was really struck by her simplicity of design, and she has a very, very charming effect. This one in Fiesta we refer to as Where's Waldo? This is so much fun. She attended the Fiesta parade. Oh, wait, so how did she come? What was her connection? How did we connect with her here? Her cousin is a woman named Lisa Burns, and Lisa's husband, Scott Burns, was Presidente for that year, the 75th anniversary of Fiesta. And so Lisa said, why don't you come up the year before and watch the parade so you can get an idea of the parade. And you can see all these favorite iconic figures that we love to look at every single parade. And she's caught them all, which is fantastic. Just 1 year here, and she just really took note of everybody. So let's take a close-up of this and see who you can find. Right at the bottom, we see Spirit of Fiesta. Over on where the arrow is, over to the right from her, you can see the mariachis, the strolling musicians coming down. Coming after the Spirit, she heads off the parade. You see St. Barbara, always with a horse-drawn float, and her white towers with the 3 towers there. Then you see over to the left, you see Father Virgil, and he's in gray robe here because the original friars at the mission were in gray robe until the end of the 19th century when the Germans showed up and they switched to brown. Then above Father Virgil, you see the bride and groom. We feature them in every fiesta. Why the bride and groom? Because Anita de la Guerra, in real life, Anita de la Guerra, the daughter of Jose de la Guerra, and she married the Alfred Robinson, who was the agent for one of the tallow and hides companies. And this wedding was the wedding of the century back in the 19th century. And it was written up by Richard Henry Dana in 2 years before the mast. And so that's why you see the figure of the bride and groom in every fiesta. And at the top arrow, who do we see in blue with an umbrella? Yes, it's Hattie Fazell on her horse once again. And there's other figures on top of this, but just to give us a start of why this is such a cute thing of everybody always loves to look at this and see who you can find. It doesn't that look like so-and-so on the side who's just one of the parade, audience members, but nicely done. We also have some use of photographs in Fiesta. And the most famous of which is J.W. Collins, who did a lot in the 20s and the 30s. He did the harbor scenes, seascapes, also a lot of Fiesta. And his work is just so dreamy. And down at the bottom, these are all real people that are in this photograph. It is a photograph, it isn't an artist rendition, but for Fiesta, this was put together and hand-colored by Peggy Lint. So it's originally just in black and white. And you see the guitar players down there. And one of those is the grandfather, I think, of Teresa Therese, if you're out there. Some friends of mine, they know their relatives are up there with the scars, but I know her father's down there with the guitar, and her grandparents were very involved dancing and playing music for the fiesta. And so it's kind of fun to look at these and say, that's my grandfather, that's my great aunt. And of course, there we've got the dancing couple. I had to point that out, it's just fun. Here's another one of for J.W. Collins, and just a very, very dreamy, very evocative one of 1920s Fiesta. And oops, this got moved over, but the lettering here, that Fiesta with the flourish was, as far as I remember, it was designed by Elaine Sweeney, and that's used in numerous posters hereafter. And this is a compilation. These photographs were taken from with permission from the Historical Museum and put together. And Rich Ailing, I think, put this together. Oh, a lot of those photos that I showed before, I'm sorry, posters that I showed before, especially from the 2000s through the teens in the millennium. Debbie Olquist was the one who did that work and put those together and basically got them in publishing, put the artwork together and taken care of that to print. And here's one more, and this was Victor Sigismondi, who was a friend of the Presidenta that year, Barbara Carroll. And what he did was very clever. He constructed this from numerous different parades and then just put in kind of our favorite features there in this one photograph. So Photoshopped that together to make that happen. And finally, we have the Sevilla posters. In Sevilla, there is an annual feria, another fiesta basically is what I'll say for that town, right before Easter that happens. And this goes back to the 19th century. And they have fabulous posters that are put every single year. And these were popular not only in Spain, but in Santa Barbara as well. So we would put those or have adaptations of those and use those for our fiesta here. The first one that I knew about, this was hanging, or the old version of this was hanging in Casa de Sevilla. And our managing director of Fiesta at that time, Diana Vandervoort, had recommended it to Jim McCoy, McConnell's Ice Cream. See how we kind of go full circle here. And that was the one that was used. You see that we have the Elaine Sweeney, the fancy Fiesta flourish there. But the figures that are on the horse there, that comes from the Sevilla. And you might see underneath the horse, you see kind of a tower there. So that would be the Giraldo, which is the bell tower for the cathedral there in Seville. And here's another beautiful one. The original one would have had again, the tower in Seville, but instead the artist here adapted, I think this was Elaine Sweeney, and removed the tower, instead put the mission in. And here is another one that we used from Sevilla, the 1998. And what they did was they changed the colors. They just changed it up. They changed the costumes, the colors and things, but it's just a beautiful rendition. And here's kind of a before and after. We simplified it a great deal, but you can get an idea of these figures being used in Spain. Here's another one. This one actually I worked on, and I left the tower in Seville. You see that up in the corner on the left, and didn't put the mission in because I thought it sort of looked like when you are on Victoria and you're looking down that alley towards the Arlington. To me, it just looked like the Arlington, so I thought I'd leave that. And here is, that is a poster from Seville in 1933. So this picture was taken in El Paseo. It's you're on the back side of the Casa de la Guerra. That's Doris Smith dancing there. And you see that same poster. There we are there. You see it only in black and white. And this is how popular they were. They were in Santa Barbara, and I've seen several of them also on the front of Casa de la Guerra, but I could find this photograph for this talk and put this in so you get the idea that this must have been early in the mid-30s, and the poster was 33, but they already had that up. Here's another one. This was done 2015. And this one also I worked on, but a great big salute to Dirk Brantz, who was the one that helped me figure out how to do this through Photoshop. So I took out the cathedral to the right there and put in the mission. And it was painstaking to do it through Photoshop. It looked like how hard could it be just to change the color of their clothes? Those of you who are in graphics know how hard it is. So but there's our original poster from Sevilla. And one more. This was the poster from 1952. This is the year before we started with our iconic dancing couple. And we look at this one and we see that this is 1952, but here is the one I found just by accident, Seville, 1950. And you can see in the center left, far left, there is the tower, the Giralda, and it's from Giralda, sorry, of the cathedral. And we've changed the artist, whoever this was, I don't know, changed it to the Mission, and we've got everybody all settled to come into Fiesta. But again, Seville's poster was 1950, and only two, they must have had, someone must have been in connection with that. And 1952, we've already got this. Prior to this year, 50 and 51, the Presidente was Francis Price, and he was really into the Spanish history of Old Spanish Days and brought over Spanish dignitaries, the council, et cetera, dancers that came from northern Spain that performed during Fiesta. And I'm wondering if that connection wasn't where we got this poster from. Maybe they brought it over and then someone said in 52, let's use that for our poster. So I believe that's everything we've got. What I want to end on is a poster that probably didn't get a lot of attention because of COVID. And that was last year's poster. And it's just magnificent. It's a perfect closure. It's a beautiful couple. Once again, the girl has her hand on the waist, the other arm over the dance position. He's got the Cordova hat. You have the Mission, beautifully drawn figures, simple, going back to our very first discussion on what makes a really good poster. This one is clean, it's clear, just magnificent. So that pretty much wraps the art of Fiesta, the posters of Old Spanish Days. And I will sign off and we will take any questions.